What's up, Mets fans? It's another episode of the True Mets Talk podcast with your boy CP. As always, make sure you're subscribing to the channel, bottom right-hand corner, commenting your thoughts and opinions. I respond to everybody in the comments, and hit that thumbs up. No better way to support the podcast rather than subscribing and thumbs upping this video. I appreciate it. Make sure you follow me on all my social media handles at CPNYSPORTS for all your latest podcast updates. Today is going to be a fun episode. I'm going to be holding myself accountable to some lofty predictions that I made at the beginning of this offseason for the New York Mets, as well as diving a little deeper on the Yamamoto situation and why the Mets must be the highest bidders. So without further ado, let's talk about some Mets baseball. All right, so you can see on your screen here, as you can see, 3 weeks ago on the Interstate Mets Report with my buddy Nelson from Amish Country Mets Fan, I made some 2024 Mets lineup and starting pitching rotation projections in terms of what I thought the Mets were going to do in this coming offseason. Keep in mind, this was a full 3 weeks ago. If you missed out on that live stream that we did on the Interstate Mets Report, I will go ahead and link that video in the description, and you can also see Nelson's projected lineup for the 2024 Mets during that time period. So like I said, this is an older video. You see the guys here highlighted in red that are pretty much out of the question for the Mets in 2024. And you see Mr. Moneybags, green is for money, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and we'll talk a little bit more about him coming up as well. So I just wanted to kind of hold myself accountable and looking back at my projections as we notice this market start to formulate. Now, you can see at the very top here in red, I had Ronnie Mauricio as my everyday DH in terms of the 2024 New York Mets. Now, for one reason or another, a lot of people pretty much stated the fact that Ronnie Mauricio most likely wasn't going to be an everyday DH. And he was slated to play in the field, giving Brett Baty some competition at third. Well, that whole dynamic has changed entirely on all fronts due to the Ronnie Mauricio ACL injury. He'll be missing the remainder of 2024 by default after hurting that knee in the Dominican Winter League. So that is first and foremost, like I mentioned in my previous video and my videos before, prayers up to Ronnie Mauricio. Hopefully a speedy recovery, and we'll see him soon in 2025. Next up, we have Juan Soto. I firmly believe that the Mets were going to try to at least make a bid for Juan Soto, and we still don't know if they even engaged the Padres in trade talks. But you all know, if you've been listening on this podcast, I am not a prospect hugger. A generational bat like Juan Soto presents itself, you go all in like the Yankees did in acquiring that bat. Now, I understand the situation that he is going to most likely, and I use that very, very loosely because I firmly do believe that the Yankees went above and beyond in the Padres' expectations for a return and what they were asking for. And the Yankees did something that they usually don't do in the last decade and pony up to a larger haul with what the trading partner team wants. And they did that for Juan Soto. So I'll say with quotation marks that he is a quote unquote free agent in 2025 because that is accurate. But I sincerely do worry that the Yankees lock him up before that happens. Now, he did have his introductory press conference and he threw out some interesting quotes there. If you missed it, he essentially said that the contract negotiations with the Yankees can wait. And he said something along the lines of, quote unquote, while I'm here. And everybody was blowing that out of proportion, especially the Mets fans that I follow, basically thinking that Juan Soto was talking about testing that free agency market. And like I said, if Juan Soto goes to free agency, I'd be more than happy to share my thoughts and opinions when that happens next offseason because I have no doubt in my mind that the Mets will pursue him. I was coming from the stance that the Mets were going to at least throw out a baseline offer for Juan Soto and see what stuck and force the Yankees to make their move. And maybe that did happen. Maybe they didn't. I haven't really heard any reports on how interested the Mets really were. I understand that David Stearns and Steve Cohen both said that the Mets weren't interested in trading prospects for 1 year rentals this offseason, but you never know. Things change when you talk about Juan Soto and the generational left-handed hitter that he really is. So that is Juan Soto. He is off the board for 2024. We'll skip Yoshinobu Yamamoto because I'll go right into him here in just a few minutes. Eduardo Rodriguez was one of the pitchers that I really, really wanted to see in a Mets uniform in 2024, not only based off of his actual pitching capabilities, which he's a great crafty left-hander, who pitched for the Detroit Tigers last season and was 100% always going to opt out of that deal. He was projected to be at around $16 million per year if he stuck with that deal. And he got himself a nice little deal for $20 million a year with the Arizona Diamondbacks. But why I wanted this is that I knew, or why I wanted Eduardo Rodriguez on the Mets is that I knew he was going to be one of the first pitchers off the board in this market. And that rang true. That would have provided the Mets a lot more flexibility in terms of waiting on a Yoshinobu Yamamoto decision instead of having to pivot and scramble to add the presumed two pitchers in the starting rotation that the Mets need. Um, Now, like I said, the Mets are still in the driver's seat. They can still pivot. You have the likes of Shota Imanaga, who you don't see on your screen here. For one reason or another, whatever I was thinking 3 weeks back. Like I said, this is in hindsight, and hindsight is always 2020. But the Mets can pivot, and they have a couple options to pivot. Now, listen, I'll get into the reason why I want Yamamoto here in a second, but the pivot points of Jordan Montgomery and Blake Snell are not good for my liking. I will say that right now. Jordan Montgomery and Blake Snell are both going to want 6 to 7 year deals, and I'm not comfortable giving a long-term deal to either one of those guys. If I had to pick one of those guys to give the long-term deal to, I would say it would be Jordan Montgomery, but I am not confident whatsoever in Jordan Montgomery's sample size. And I truly do believe that it would be a mistake if the Mets did pony up a 6 or 7 year deal for Jordan Montgomery. 3, 4 years, no problem. But he is 30 years old, approaching 31 years old. I believe I have that correct. I don't think he's 31 already. But regardless, 30 to 31 years old, he's going to want that long-term deal. That is a fact, and that you will see that here in the coming weeks. Whenever he signs, whether it's before or after Yamamoto, doesn't matter. I have a feeling that Snell and Montgomery are going to wait until after Yamamoto signs to drive their bargaining price up, but it remains to be seen. So, like I said, Erod was one of those guys that I wanted the Mets to pursue early and often because it would have provided them a lot more flexibility. And for us fans, it would provide us a lot more peace of mind knowing that one of those two rotation spots would have been filled already after the Luis Severino signing, and there would have only been one more to go. But instead, we are here on December 15th, still talking about two starting pitching rotation spots that need to be filled if the Mets are serious about 2024. And like I said, my narrative and my tune for 2024, given what we've seen so far this offseason with the Mets, is changing just a little bit. It's not a bad thing for what I'll say, but it is more of the fact that maybe the Mets really are using 2024 as a bridge year. We'll see very shortly. There are still free agents left to be had, and that is not to panic the Mets fan base because, like I said, no matter how you chalk it up, the Mets are going to be best positioned to go after free agents and have that young talent coming up in 2025. I just didn't think, and I still don't think, that it's best to give up on a full year with the long-term contracts already invested on this team with the likes of Lindor, Nimmo, Diaz, even McNeil and Pete Alonso's extension on the horizon. I think it's a waste of a year, but we will see how this roster ends up. You have about 5 more spots on the roster before you hit the 40-man roster max capacity. They're at 35 right now, so we'll see how the Mets choose wisely to fill those 5 roster spots from now until the end of free agency. And the last name in red here you can see is Tyler Glasnow. Breaking news as of today. I am recording this on December 14th, so keep in mind that it is today. I'll be dropping it tomorrow, December 15th. The Dodgers finally, not finally, but they formally traded officially for Tyler Glasnow and Manuel Margot in a deal that sends Glasnow and Margot to the Dodgers in exchange for Pepio, I hope I'm saying that name correctly. A promising young pitcher, but still has a lot left to prove. And then another minor league piece, forgot what position he plays. I think it's DeLuca, if I'm not mistaken. Not familiar with the Dodgers prospects fully, but all I know is that the Dodgers got their ace or one of their co-aces in Tyler Glasnow. Now, I fully understand that Tyler Glasnow is 30 years old. He's going to want an immediate extension, and that was one of the parameters in this Dodgers-Rays trade is that if the deal were to officially go through, the Dodgers have to immediately give Tyler Glasnow an extension because he only has that 1 year, $25 million year left on his contract right now as the Dodgers are trading for him. So the Dodgers are currently in the works of extending Tyler Glasnow. Now it is a very risky move. I do understand that given the injury history of Tyler Glasnow, but with the Dodgers offer and now seeing what they in turn gave the Rays as a return, I don't think it's something that the Mets could not have matched at the very minimum. And like I said, and a lot of people don't want to acknowledge this, that Tyler Glasnow, even given the injury history, when he is out there and able to pitch on the mound, he is one of the best pitchers in all of the MLB. That's 100% a fact. So, like I said, I'm holding myself accountable. The guys in red is who I projected to be in the Mets 2024 lineup. I really did think, like, it's crazy to think back on this and what I see on the screen here of what I put 3 weeks ago and sort of think about how the Mets' offseason has gone so far, primarily prioritizing depth pieces in the bullpen and some of the sort of utility depth pieces in Joey Wendell, Jose Iglesias, etc. Trace Thompson, most recently being signed to the Mets instead of having those home run hitting deals that we've seen in years past for the Mets. We all know the Mets so far this offseason have been taking a different approach, and we'll see truly how they view 2024, whether it is a bridge year truly for 2025 or not. Like I said, the end of the free agency, the offseason is not over. The trade markets can still be worked, but I am growing a little weary in terms of what the end goal for 2024 is for the New York Mets. They stated that the Mets are going to be quote unquote competitive no matter in 2024, no matter what. But we'll see the full extent of what competitive truly means in terms of what the Mets definition of competitive really means versus what us fans have as a definition for competitive. So, like I said, let's talk about the money man in green here, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and why the Mets must be the highest bidders to win the services of Yoshinobu Yamamoto in 2024 and beyond, no matter if they're using this as a bridge year or not. It does not matter. Yoshinobu Yamamoto is going to get a deal for around anywhere in between 8 to 10 years. He is going to be on his team with whoever he chooses for up to the next decade. I want to say 8 is on the lower end and 10 is just about where I'm expecting it at this point, given what his annual average salary is projected to be at and the total $1 million value north of 300 that he's going to get. We'll see what the exact year is, but this is not a short-term deal we're talking about here with Yoshinobu Yamamoto. It doesn't matter if you're using 2024 as a bridge year for the New York Mets if you're the Mets front office. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, if you do sign him, and if you are the highest bidder and he chooses you, being the New York Mets, to go pitch in Queens and be that ace for the foreseeable future, you have him locked up and your window period for competing and having that competitive top of the rotation with Yamamoto and Senga automatically increases. Now, I'm not going to go over Yamamoto's accolades and what he's posted in the Japanese league. That speaks for itself. You can go look that up. He is very well established, and he is going to be a great pitcher in the MLB. Not only because he's a young phenom, but also he has a very vast pitch arsenal that he is in command of, regardless of his stature. I know that is a concern. He throws hard for a 5'10 pitcher, but that's neither here nor there. You don't pass up on a signing like this because he's 5'10. You just simply don't do it. Now, like I said, you have to pay this man at all costs. You see it on the screen. This is what I firmly believe. The 2025 free agent class in terms of pitchers gets interesting because not only with the bats do you have Juan Soto coming on the market, potentially Alex Bregman coming on the market if third base remains an issue for the Mets. That's fine. That's the hitting side of things. I get it. Outside of those two guys and maybe Anthony Santander for the outfield for an outfield spot, the hitting sort of free agent class in 2025 gets a little bit thin after those three guys. But the pitching class is intriguing. And I'll say it's intriguing because there's a couple of names that really do intrigue me, and the rest of the market really is, I guess, well defined in terms of talent, but they're on the higher end of age. And Keith, shout out Shan Sons, Keith and Key. Keith had a great representation of the 2025 free agent market in terms of pitching on his Twitter account today. So make sure you go check him out. I will link his Twitter, his personal Twitter here in the description down below because that's where he tweeted it from. But given the age of the market in terms of starting pitching in 2025, there's only a couple of names that do intrigue me. First and foremost, Corbin Burnes. That is one name. If I had to choose the Mets get in 2025 free agency, I'd love to go after him via trade this offseason. That'd be great. But if they really do view him as an option, it might be in 2025 free agency, and he's just around 30 to 31 years old, if I'm not mistaken as well. I do have to fact check myself on there. He's either 30 to 31 or 33. Apologies for being misinformed there, but he's on the lower end of the 30s. He's not up there to mid 30s just yet. That I do know for a fact. So Corbin Burnes is one of the more realistic options as well when you talk about a connection with David Stearns and that whole dynamic. Number two is Shane Bieber, a guy that's been speculated as a trade target for the Mets for quite some time. I do understand the concerns of his fastball velocity coming down as each year goes by, but he's also early 30s. And like I said, his stats do speak for itself. He is still one of those pitchers that is very serviceable, especially in the back end of the rotation, maybe a four spot if Jose Quintana, and when Jose Quintana walks, presumably the Mets are not going to go after him again. That is a nice little fourth man in your rotation if I had to chalk it up. And now you're talking about if you sign Yamamoto, a rotation of Burnes, Senga, Bieber, and Yamamoto. And now we're talking about one of the best pitching staffs in all of baseball. So there's a lot of different ways the Mets can approach this, and they don't have to necessarily address this issue in 2024 if they really view this as a bridge year. But Yamamoto certainly does help, and he will be right in the picture, in the thick of things, come 2025 when that free agent class presents itself. Some other names in the 2025 free agency market is a name like Zach Wheeler, who's in his mid 30s. Obviously, the Mets had a chance to re-sign him back when the Wilpons still owned the team, chose not to do so, and we saw the great career that he's turned out in Philadelphia. And the list keeps going on with premier talent. I will say it's premier talent, but they're all on the higher side of the 30s, and something that I really don't want the Mets to replicate moving forward, especially with what we saw to Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer in recent seasons. That's not a road I want the Mets to go down. So like I said, Yamamoto, regardless if you are serious about contending for a World Series in 2024, you have to go after this guy in free agency. You have to do it. You have to bid higher than the next team up. The Yankees, there was a bogus report out there today that the Yankees offered him 9 years, $304 million, and that's on the table for him. I don't buy it. I don't see the Yankees going to the 300s. And even if that report is true, I believe it was Carlos Baerga who did tweet that out. I firmly believe that if Steve Cohen gets wind that the Yankees are offering 9 for $304 million, he has no problem upping that to 325. And if he gets wind that the Dodgers are willing to go to 325, I find it hard to believe he will not go up to 350, 355, a little extra boost for Yamamoto, an incentive for him to take that deal. And if you missed the video that I dropped yesterday with these misleading headlines and the facts not being fully reported to the MLB general public for us fans and you viewers, the Oryx Buffaloes, the Japanese team that Yamamoto has played for in the Japanese league, does get revenue sharing for whatever dollar value Yamamoto ends up signing for in the MLB, up to a certain percentage for each $1 million threshold. Like I mentioned, for the first $25 million of Yamamoto's presumed contract, the Oryx Buffaloes will get a percentage of that. Then when it goes up to 50, they get an additional percentage, and so on and so forth. And as is customary with a lot of international free agents where is the case, that revenue sharing is the case, it is a sign of respect to their former team that posted them onto the market in order for them to make their way to the MLB, especially at the young age of 25 for Yamamoto. We didn't even see Ohtani on the market and being posted at 25 years old, which basically I think hindered his initial contract signing with the Angels way back when, 6 years ago. That is the ultimate sign of respect in terms of getting your former Japanese league team the utmost dollar value coming over from the MLB. So, like I said, there's a whole lot of things at play here. You think about these reporters and their headlines talking about the Dodgers are a better fit because they are in win now mode 100%, and they have Ohtani coming over and sort of making that pitch. The stars coming out, Freeman, Betts, Ohtani being present during those meetings, or the prestige of the Yankees. And we're talking about the New York Mets here, who are still in the largest market, or one of the largest markets in the MLB, right? Regardless if you're in the Bronx or Queens, you're in a large market, and Yamamoto gets to be that guy in the rotation. And the Mets fans are going to back him, just like they backed Edwin Diaz when he put on a show in 2022 with the trumpets and the entrance from the bullpen. All of that is so marketable, and or Yamamoto, excuse me, can get that same marketability in Queens just as easy as LA or the Bronx. And I know that's the only three teams I'm mentioning, and we still have the Blue Jays at play here, maybe the Giants, the Phillies. Yamamoto just met with the Phillies yesterday on the 14th in their camp. The Red Sox, I understand that there's more players at play here, more teams at play here. That's very well understood. But when you think about the top three favorites, according to these bogus reports, and how much stock you really want to put into Nightingale saying that the Dodgers are right in the thing or mix of things, but the Yankees are the favorites, or John Heyman saying that the Dodgers and the Yankees are co-favorites. However much stock you want to put into that, the Mets are right there in the thick of things because of Steve Cohen's wall, and that is a grand old fact. So, like I said, even if the Mets are using 2024 as a bridge year, which I necessarily don't agree with, and I don't buy into it until I see it, you still got to go after Yamamoto. It's not because the Mets aren't going to be competitive in 2024. That's a reason not to go after Yamamoto. He's going to be here for 8, 9, 10 years. Whatever contract he signs, he's going to be in that respective uniform, and he is going to be part of that core moving forward. So it makes no sense to pass up on Yamamoto, even if the Mets don't view themselves as immediate World Series contenders in 2024. I'll say that till I'm blue in the face. I probably have said that maybe 5 or 6 times in the past couple minutes here on this podcast, and I'm sorry if it's getting annoying, but I see a lot of Mets fans dooming and glooming over the fact that, oh, Yamamoto's not going to want to come here if the Mets' plan is not to win in 2024. I don't buy that, and neither should you if you're a rational Mets fan and are not resorting to those doom and gloom narratives. So, like I said, let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know if you want to see the Mets be the highest bidders for Yamamoto, or if you truly do think it's best to pass him up because the Mets are not immediate contenders in 2024. If you are part of that doom and gloom narrative, that's okay. You're truly and exceptionally accepted on this podcast, and you are able to voice your opinion in the comments. I will disagree with you. I'll give you the disclaimer. I will disagree with you, and I'll tell you why, but it's always respectful on this podcast. We don't get disrespectful. So every Mets fan's opinions are welcome. Let me know in the comments section exactly what you think. Subscribe to the channel. I'm putting out daily content. I'm coming up on a trip here. I'm going out of town on Saturday. I'll be out of commission from Saturday to Wednesday. I'll try to maybe put out a short if we see some news, but it's going to be relatively quiet. I do want to give that heads up. Comment your thoughts and opinions. Hit that thumbs up. I'm definitely noticing all the thumbs up that people are dropping, so make sure you keep dropping those thumbs up. I thoroughly appreciate it. And follow me on all my social medias. Tap that notifications button. You'll get notified when I'm going live or dropping a pre-recorded episode just like this one, and you don't want to miss out because we have a lot more Mets news to talk about. Regardless if you think the Mets are going full throttle in 2024 or not, it doesn't matter. there are moves that need to be made still by default with how the 40-man roster looks so far and the Mets only being at 35 players of those 40 available spots. So, like I said, let me know, subscribe to the channel, comment your thoughts and opinions, and as always, y'all, let's go Mets. It's going to be always let's go Mets to the end of time, no matter how this offseason shakes out. Will I be disappointed if they don't truly go for it in 2024 and their offseason moves don't resemble that? Absolutely. But it's not always about who wins the offseason. Shout out Talking Mets with Rob, dropping some knowledge on the timeline today on his Twitter account. It's not always about who wins the offseason because the Mets had quote unquote great off seasons the last two off seasons, and they didn't make the World Series. So, like I said, that always is a fact. Now, I understand the Dodgers look sexy on paper, but strange things happen when the MLB playoffs roll around. Let's go Mets. Until next time, I'm out. Thank you for watching the latest episode of the CP New York Sports Pod. If you enjoyed this content, make sure you hit that thumbs up, comment your thoughts and opinions, and use the lower right-hand button of this video to subscribe to the channel. Thank you.